to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast with Borg, Betz, and a baller.
Welcome in. It's time to pump up the jams.
Oh, yes. You went with it.
You know, it's the first show, and people they have very high expectations of this show.
As they should.
And as the one, I'm going to call myself a point guard on this show, if that's okay.
Which type? Are you like a Steve Nash?
So I talked
Chris
to Andy
Paul?
about this. I know you guys have Phoenix reference. I'm going to go with an Atlanta-based reference. I don't know if you remember this.
Okay.
Mookie Blaylock.
Ooh,
No?
that's setting your bar real high, huh? Hey, welcome into the show, led by
Mookie.
average host.
Hey, then I'll go Kevin Johnson,
There we go.
Yeah, we're back, baby.
Okay. All right.
which means
The mayor.
Jason, you're going to have to go Charles Barkley here.
Oh, of course. I'll be the round mound of rebound all day.
And you got style, Mike, so you could be Cedric Ceballos.
Okay.
like
Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, no,
Slam
well,
dunk champ.
why not? Welcome in. First ever episode of the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. And I just want to say, the hype behind this it's been a groundswell movement of people saying, we need this, we want this. But I think you two have said, I need to be on this show. I have to be
Yes.
on this show, and I need to let loose. So, Jason, I know you've been holding back for a while, and I know we're going to get to share some things, even some things that people don't know from your coveted black book.
Ooh.
Of secrets.
It is here. A lot of people have been asking, are we going to have this on video? Will this be on YouTube? And the black book cannot be seen. So this is cameras off. You get to have insider information here, but you can't see the majesty of the black book.
No, and there's stuff in the book that Jason has it hidden from me right now, so I can't even see it. But when we talk about prospects today, we're going to be talking about the rookie running back class. We're just going to get it to unveil and go much further than we did yesterday on the main show and kind of build off of that conversation. So, Mike, apart from just giving that ripper to start the show, are you excited for Dynasty?
Oh man, I'm very, very excited to talk about these running backs. I don't even have access to Jason's black book over there, the Necronomicon, essentially, for a good Evil Dead reference. It'll be fun to talk about what I value when I'm watching these running backs. It'll be interesting to hear the perspective from you two as well, of because we each certainly value certain traits more than other people do, and yet then we see which guys we come together on, like Charbonnet, where Jason and I are madly in love with him, and we have a different process that gets us there.
And I'm here, just so you know, I'm not just going to copy and paste what you guys say. I'm going to give some counterpoints, because that's kind of my personality. I don't mind stirring it up a little bit.
If what people at home may not realize is, like, on the Footballers Main podcast, I will say I've like Mike, he's sometimes goes contrarian. It's seemingly almost just to do it. And I would push back. I'm like, no, I just, maybe a little bit sometimes. But Kyle is the worst. The worst. If you tell Kyle he can do something, he will refuse.
If there is a movie that everyone is talking about,
oh, yeah.
he's not allowed to see it by law now.
John Wick 4, you guys are excited about that, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
not going to see it.
Just a full pass for Kyle.
You did already this morning in the studio. He came to me before you were in, Mike, and said, I can't wait to talk about Charbonnet because I'm gonna counterpunch. So you'll get the whole gamut here. You're going to get different opinions. And
I'm super stoked for his anti-Bijan Robinson.
He's okay. No,
Yeah, there it is.
There's not much you can say about Bijan. You can follow the show on Spotify, Apple. We're excited to be able to do this week in, week out. But I think the part in Dynasty we're excited about is talking about the nasty in Dynasty. I'm going to try to refrain.
That's what it's all about, man.
I'm going to refrain from hitting that drop, but both of you guys have access to that drop if you just want to use it as much as you want to.
Yeah, don't worry. We'll get it in there.
So we want to start this out and hit a quick question here. For a lot of people, they've listened to footballers for a while, but Dynasty might be something new. I feel like on this podcast, we're going to hit people that have played for years and want to figure out how to go deeper, how to figure out how to look at players and evaluate them. But what is one Dynasty tip that has proved tried and true for you as a manager, Jason?
For me, it is to sell young stud running backs 1 year into their second contract. It is really difficult when you have a great running back to actually let them go. Everyone wants them. There are never enough. Go look at your dynasty leagues and tell me how many teams are happy with their running backs. You're going to have 2 teams
maximum
that are happy with their running backs, and the rest are needing running backs. And when you have Zeke, and he just signs a new long-term extension, you've got Mixon off a great year, signs a long-term extension. You've got Kamara, who's been a superstar, signs a long-term extension. Dalvin Cook, awesome, signs a long-term extension. That first year, they're still great. That is when you sell them. You sell them right then. And look at the 4 guys I just mentioned. They were all cut or could still be cut, and you have no idea what their future is. This is a couple years now into their extension. You want to sell running backs for a young stud running back plus a pick over and over and over. It's how you keep restocking your running backs.
Is this something you saw Andy do, and then you just said, hey, because
that's good.
I've seen Andy, and I've heard him talk about this too.
Andy has done it several times. There was I think his most famous was at peak Todd Gurley, when it looked like, Todd Gurley was a top 5 dynasty asset. It was untouchable, hard to get. And he was able to, after a great season, bite the bullet and say, I'm going to trade him for a haul. And he did. And then Todd Gurley disappeared from the face of the planet because he's a running back. And that's what happens. And he, I believe, got Dalvin Cook plus picks. And then it turned out Dalvin Cook was a better future asset as he was the younger player at the time.
Yeah, and I'll just follow up. I think that evaluating players in Dynasty is a tricky thing. And when you start to bring in ADP, you're going to find lots of different sources, which are great as a piece of the puzzle. But ADP for Dynasty is a roadmap, and sometimes that leads you to, awesome treasure, and other times it's just pure trash. ADP in Dynasty is very different. When we look at ADP for redraft, we have a short time frame that we're looking at. Okay, is this player going to be good for 2023? In Dynasty, we're thinking this is what I think someone is worth, not what they're actually worth. And so we put a lot of times a value and a cost on a player that we're just not sure how it's going to turn out. I was in a startup draft with you gentlemen in a league that we just happened to be in together in Dynasty.
Just happened to.
Yeah, no big deal. We won't discuss that league at all on this podcast.
Wait, are you
champ? Mike,
yeah.
You're the champ?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm the champ. We must manage that team together.
Let it be known that I was the original champ of this league. I need to throw that in there.
Okay.
Cool.
And then
that one time?
That's
fun.
It was my first year, but what I'm saying is I drafted Juju as my first round pick because there was a point where Juju looked like an untouchable dynasty asset as he's the wide receiver 1 or 2. It was him or Michael Thomas that people wanted. And when you look now and you go, wow, that is so far. And my draft, I felt so dumb because what I put on that player was this is what they are and this is what they're going to be. He's a young dynasty wide receiver. And so just keep that in mind. This is an open market and we are assessing value when we're trading of, I think this player is worth this much. So keep in mind when people give you, a trade calculator or evaluation, that's a piece of the puzzle, but I wouldn't say that's a final value.
Sure. I'll jump in. My biggest tip is, number one, know the rules of your league, which is a funny thing to have to remind people of, but make sure you know what's going on. And I say that specifically because our dynasty leagues, we roll with 2 fab budgets. As soon as the Super Bowl is done, everyone's fab is replenished back up to 100, and then that carries you through the offseason. Once the season kicks off, you are replenished again. So you get an off-season one and you get an in-season one. And after your rookie drafts, go see which rookies are available and be super aggressive. Because you'll see, how we look at these players during the rookie draft, it can be shaken up pretty quickly in the next few weeks. And so, I'll give an example here of players I have gotten off of our waiver wire after we do a 3-round. Immediately. We do a 3-round rookie draft. There's a lot of places that go 4 or 5, but, there's a lot of leagues that go 3. Terry McLaurin, Aaron Jones, Daniel Jones, the first-round quarterback. Like, this offseason, Romeo Doubs, who it hasn't turned into anything yet, but, I mean, the hype train for Romeo Doubs shortly after our rookie drafts, like, got out of control with the Christian Watson injury and what could Doubs be. But, like, those – not everyone you're going to get off the waiver is going to be a tremendous hit like that because, I have – for all those players, I have my the tight end stashes of, like, Gerald Everett, Adam Troutman, these guys where you're like, it makes sense for them to be on a team, so but then they don't pan out. But my point is, like, Terry McLaurin was a third-round pick, but he got drafted by the Washington Manders, and it was like no one – wants anything to do with this. Why did Terry McLaurin get drafted into the third round? Yada. Just take the shot. Go be aggressive on this because you want a ton of rookies mixed in with veterans, but you want a ton of upside rookies, and these are free stashes that can pay out in a huge way.
To speak to your tip here, you have always been in our leagues the most aggressive there, and I mean that in your fab spend. You're willing to leave the day after the draft with $0 because you're going to just dump everything you can on those guys right then, and you usually get them. And I have had to learn my lesson because I'm angry the day after. I'm like, dang it, I wanted that guy. I put a cheap bid in, and then by the time that the season rolls around, because Dynasty, there's just not as many daily transactions that you can make, and the waivers are much emptier. I usually go into the season when we reset the fab with fab dollars left over. I don't get anything for that, so be aggressive.
Yeah,
Which you beat me this year because
I learned.
You did learn your lesson, and you got Pacheco, and I did not.
Whew, that feels nice.
Yeah, a name that came to my mind this past year was Chigakonkwo. That was just a tight end. Usually you don't want to draft them there, but past the third round. So I think those are players that you could find, and you could find a lot more in the 2023 Dynasty Pass. We just had our post-combine update. We'll have an update after the NFL draft. We got our rookie mock draft. You guys just updated. I know Andy did some rookie rankings updates. So
I did as well. All of our startup rankings are rookie rankings. Basically the rookie scouting is all in the Ultimate Draft Kit. If you are doing any kind of Dynasty League, any startup, or you just play in a long term, get the Ultimate Draft Kit Plus. It has literally everything that you need to dominate for Dynasty. That's why we're here. So go to ultimatedraftkit.com, get the UDK Plus for the Dynasty information.
All right, let's get in the meat of it.
Running backs.
This week, we're going to look at the running backs in depth. And, there's kind of a tier of guys that, we talked about on the main show, but we're going to even go further with them, kind of talk about here's where we think they can go in rookie drafts. Here's some good landing spots. Here's a best case scenario, worst case scenario. I guess I'm bringing up the worst case. That's my job, right?
Yes, it is your job.
Okay, that's cool. But one of my favorite parts of this process, and I think what you two gentlemen are very good at, is what do we look for in scouting these running backs, and then how does that translate to fantasy? It's one thing to watch the tape and be a part of that group, and I love doing that. I love looking at the tape from just an NFL perspective. But what we care is how does this translate to fantasy football? And luckily, running back, I think, is the position that translates the best from college. Like compared to tight end or wide receiver or like even other positions like offensive tackle, like there's a huge learning curve from college to the NFL where you get in with certain systems and schemes. I would say running back, you guys can correct me, is like the easiest of early on. You can quickly see like, can this guy translate?
Yes. For sure. You see it every single year. Rookie running backs, they can just get the ball and go. If they've got good vision and they know where to run, it's how fast and strong and talented are you? Just go be fast and strong and talented. So when I'm scouting rookie running backs, here's the things that I personally look for more than others. One, I'm looking for their weight because, as we're going to talk about a lot on this show, that matters tremendously for running backs. And sometimes we make things too hard on ourselves. We're trying to outsmart the system. Just do what works. I'm going to read you the weights in a little bit of some of these running backs from this last year, and you'll see a trend. I also care about when I'm watching. I want to see when they're in their opportunities one-on-one. Right, they get a little bit of space, and not when they're in the open field, but when they have an opportunity mano-a-mano. Do they usually and I mean almost always, break that tackle, because if the college prospect isn't winning those one-on-ones, he's not going to come in and just dominate the NFL guys. But when I watch rookie running backs or college running backs, really, I like seeing them win almost every time in those one-on-one situations. Can they catch the ball? Because that translates for fantasy. And then total touchdowns in college, because statistically that is one of the bizarrely predictive stats. Those guys with a big touchdown share, they end up doing well in college. And for whatever reason, because they've got the nose for the end zone, or because the team says
they can smell it,
because the team says this is the guy we rely on when we're near there, or for whatever reason, breakaway speed, those stats translate.
So you like big boys that can get in the end zone.
Yeah, and my we'll call it my crush meter. I can't handle running backs that are over 215 pounds and fast. I get too hot and bothered. If they've got that speed score, that weight-adjusted speed score, and it's high,
yeah.
I mean, I'm in.
All right, Mike, what about you? What do you look for?
So when I'm my rubric, I'll say, for when I'm grading out these running backs, so I lay it out in these categories. So I have power, vision, burst, speed, and yes, burst and speed are different. Like burst is, can you get up to, can you go from 0 to 60 quickly, and then speed is your long speed. Balance and catching, which I put a huge emphasis one on catching like Jason does, but contact balance. I want to see a player, which I guess it's sort of similar to Jason, what he's saying of in a one-on-one situation, is he going to win? But I want to see if a player gets hit as he's going through the line, what does his body look like? Does he does he keep his feet underneath him? Does he keep moving forward? Is an arm tackle going to bring this player down? And like players, the gold standard would be for me, it's like Marshawn Lynch, Kareem Hunt. To me, that's why those guys were so good, because their balance is just truly elite. It takes so much to knock them off of their center of gravity that they can keep moving forward with no problem. So when I'm watching the film, I grade out those categories from a 1 to 5. It's all personal of what I see on the tape. And what I really like doing is, if you want to nerd out, this is my process of, you want to watch a full games of these players. Mm-hmm. What does it look like when the running back is getting the ball over and over on each and every one of their touches? But then I like to go and mix in highlight films, because what does that player do when they are at their absolute best and making someone else look stupid? That's a lot of the time where you see the speed. Like my knock on Isaiah Spiller last year, when I was watching his tapes and his highlights, where he'd get through and someone would catch him. I'm like, that's not elite long speed. If you're getting caught from the back by a college player, that's not going to translate into the pros for me. So those are the types of things that I'm looking for, and that's how my process works. And
just to put some numbers with it, like, I look for just simple things like explosive plays. How often do they go for runs of 15-plus yards?
Sure.
To go with the contact balance, yards after contact is one that we look at a lot. It can be skewed because, you hit somebody, but we want that. We want someone that can hit somebody and then keep going for, another 20, 30 yards. Force missed tackles, and we'll talk about a player who set the record this past year, according to Pro Football Focus, in college for missed tackles. And the last thing I'll say is, their dominator rating is something we have in the Dynasty Pass that kind of shows, like, here's their percentage of yards, team yards and touchdowns. That's a simple metric, but it's really helpful for us to see, do they hit that 30% mark? That's something we care about. So this first player, we're going to spend more than a minute on them because they're worth it, but I have to hit the drop.
It's the Bijan Minute, yeah.
Well, to talk about Bijan and to translate, no, that's the wrong word. What
I don't know where you're going.
Transition,
man.
There it is.
Yes.
What a smooth transition.
Professional.
From what we were talking about, one of my unofficial things that I look for is when I talk about, the one-on-ones, or Mike, you talk about the contact balance. Unofficially, I say, how many dudes does it take to tackle this running back? I want it to be a village. When I watch these guys, there's some running backs where it's like Najee in college was this way. It was like, One guy is never going to take this guy down. He's just going to drag you a little while. And that's kind of Bijan. Bijan takes a team to tackle him. He's going to stiff arm a guy and break a tackle here. And that's where, you talk about, yards after contact, broken tackles forced. Those are Bijan's specialties.
Yeah, he set PFF's record for that with 104 this past year. He had 37% of Texas's team yards, a 39% dominator rating. Like, those are the things that we're saying, like, this is a elite player. And I think our discussion on the main show and our discussion here is to remind people he just has one of the highest floors we could have for a prospect. And that's not a bad thing. I think people want to hear what is his ceiling, and that's kind of the conversation. But, like, having an insanely high floor, you comped him to Matt Forte of saying, hey, here's 5 to 6 years of being an RB1.
Mm-hmm.
That's really hard to find. I think people don't realize that.
I put in my black book, he is more Zeke than Barkley. He is a tough, powerful guy that is not the same explosive athlete, but will certainly gain extra yards every time he touches the ball.
He was interesting watching him because one of my notes, this isn't NFL translation stuff, but I said his upper body never looks like it's pumping. It's this straight. Watch Bijan run when he's hitting a long run, and his upper body is so calm compared to other guys who are just throwing their fist into the air. And then for the pass catching, watch the Alabama game. There is a particular play where Bijan runs a wheel route, catches it, jumps full like a full 180 in the air to catch the ball like a wide receiver, lands, and then is right back into full speed. You're like, holy freaking crap, this guy is going to destroy people in the NFL.
Yeah, and so because this is the Dynasty show and we look a little bit deeper at some of these things, the NFL, the general managers and their scouting departments, they know the histories of all these players, and those things factor in. When we get to the quarterback episode, we're going to talk about Bryce Young and the fact that he has been basically groomed from being a newborn baby to be a superstar NFL quarterback, and this is what Bijan was. What you want, you saw this with Trevor Lawrence a couple years ago. He's like the number one recruit in high school, and then the best in college, and then the number one pick in the draft. That's what Bijan is. He was a 5-star recruit out of good old Arizona.
I can't believe he got out of Tucson.
I know. Nothing gets out of Tucson.
You have only said very bad things about Tucson.
Well, Tucson is the armpit of the world.
I think you've used other words than
Yeah,
armpit.
it's the anus of Arizona.
Yeah.
Wow.
The nice thing is U of A's got a nice little campus right in the middle of that, but just don't walk outside that. He did get out of Tucson. I know. He did get out of Tucson, but he was the number one running back recruit in the class. And when that doesn't always translate. Keyshawn Boutte was supposed to be the greatest, wide receiver recruit coming in, but he didn't, stick with it. But when a guy is the number one recruit and then goes and becomes the number one guy as expected, and now he's everyone's number one running back on their big boards, he's going to keep doing it. He's met the expectations every level. It's not going to go away in the NFL.
And when you have draft capital that seems to be in the first round, and as high as 10 for some people, like
that's not happening. He's not going to the Eagles at 10.
I wouldn't bet that, but I'm not saying it's like out of the realm of possibility.
He could go to Atlanta at 8.
I mean,
that's my favorite
would
spot.
you be happy with that?
I would be
Kyle?
super happy. I think team building wise, that would be dumb, but hey,
It would be fun.
Yeah, I'm here for the fun.
I will say when the NFL draft is happening, that is the pick that I am most hopeful for because it cuts out any other bad landing spot and it gives him supreme draft capital. He is currently on average the 14.6th player taken on major media mock drafts.
So with first round draft capital, with the high floor we're talking about, let's say a year from now, okay, people took him at 101, and I'm assuming in Superflex, he's pretty much going to go 101, maybe 102 if you need quarterback, that's fine. A year from now, will we be saying Bijan is the 101 in startups?
Not the one. I wouldn't say the 101,
Yeah,
he'll be a first rounder in redraft for sure.
he very well might be the 101 at the position. I think.
Yeah, he could be.
So what's funny is he's got nowhere to go but down, and this is why if you have the 101, you should be looking at what options you can trade him for. Right now, I would say that most people's ranking after the NFL draft, when rookies start getting mixed in with veterans for startup drafts, I believe Bijan will be the number one rookie draft pick. I think he'll be ahead of Jonathan Taylor, ahead of Christian McCaffrey, ahead of
running back. You said rookie.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
The number one running back in all of fantasy football.
I think it's interesting because I have these questions. I'm seeing them on our Discord channel, and people don't realize like there are very few running backs. You brought this up, but he's actually going to probably gain value from where he's going now to next year, or he's going to be even a more valuable asset that if you want to trade him a year or two from now, like Jason said, like 3 or 4 years, like you're going to be able to get a haul for him.
And remember, when he signs that second contract and he's a great asset, trade him away.
All right, next running back we're going to talk about is Jamir Gibbs out of Alabama, and I need to give a shout out. He's from Dalton, Georgia, which is the carpet capital of Georgia, northern.
Carpet, like they produce
It's
a
like,
lot of carpet?
It is the carpet place. Like if you're from Georgia, you know Dalton.
But you called it the carpet capital of Georgia. So
Yes.
only
I don't know.
Georgia gets their carpet from there, or does it service like the whole Southeast?
I think it's a southeast thing, but I cannot confirm or deny the rest of the country where the carpet is.
Hate hardwood floors.
Yeah, what
in Dalton.
kind of fibers we talking about over there?
You know,
deep, lush.
It's a big deal in Georgia. I'll just say that. This show is also geography.
Carpeting their
lesson.
bathrooms.
I don't think you were ready to talk about carpet. You thought you could throw that out on this podcast and get away with it.
I was ready to talk about Dalton, Georgia, and that's about it. But hey, you brought up Tucson. But yeah, we'll go through the geography here. Jamir Gibbs is interesting, not just because of his size, which we'll talk about. He was a transfer from Georgia Tech. He's also been a kick returner. But when he transferred to Alabama, I think it needs to be said, like he jumped over their number one running back recruit and became the dude in college football's premier program. So that's a big deal to move on and be elite, have great production, especially in the passing game. 44 receptions is the second most ever for an Alabama running back. And in the office earlier, we were just naming every Alabama running back that they've translated to the pros.
They churn them out.
They do it. 4.36 40 time is awesome, but we got to talk about the weight because he weighed in just under 200 pounds. If he just would have had lunch with us on a normal day, he would have gotten over the 200.
I can show you the way, Jamir. Just come to my house for one day. You'll eat in a way that you go, oh, yeah, I can put on the pounds. And, you've got some speed to lose. So the weight is an issue. Let's talk about that now. Obviously, he didn't crack that 200 mark. You want players over 200 pounds. Whether or not he's 199 or 200, it doesn't act. It puts him in a different tier of historical comps, but that's irrelevant. He's 200 pounds. Is that good enough for fantasy football? And I want to just read you the weight of the top 20 running back from this last season. The top 20 running back finishers. Here's their weight: 233 pounds, 228 pounds, 215 pounds, 215, 211, 228, 232, 211, 220, 230, 210, 208. That's the lightest so far. Aaron Jones, pass catcher, 224, 210, 232, 227, 247, 220.
I beg you to stop, good sir.
205. That's Christian
okay.
freaking McCaffrey, who's going to catch 100 passes or 100 targets, and then 200 with Austin Eckler. This isn't a trend. This is the real.
Was that RB1 and RB2?
Yeah, they were. So if you are an absolute excellent pass catching back of which Jamir Gibbs is,
caught the second most ever in Alabama,
I would super take umbrage with comparing. So the high end comps, right? These pass catching lighter backs who have had massive success. The two names I think that come to most people's mind would be Christian McCaffrey and Jamal Charles. Unbelievably Hall of Fame players, right?
Yeah.
These are Hall of Fame running backs. If you look at what those guys did in college, Jamal Charles, that's the hope for Jamir Gibbs. Jamal Charles' final season, 258 carries for 1,629 yards, and then a lot of receiving work. He was a dominant player that is far different than Jamir Gibbs. Christian McCaffrey makes Jamal Charles' numbers look dumb. And so I just caution people because right now, I know, Mike, you love Gibbs. I love Gibbs on tape. What he's going to do on a per-touch basis is going to be awesome. But will the NFL give this guy 200 carries? Just 200. Because he never got it in college.
Yeah, so, it's difficult. First off, because the way that Alabama structures things, like Josh Jacobs was a first-round pick, and the biggest knock on Josh Jacobs going into the draft was the production is not there. But you watch him play, and you go, that's the best running back of that year. And the NFL knew that. They took him in the first round. Well, the Raiders took him in the first round, but I don't think every team is willing to do that. And so guys who play for Alabama, number one, they succeed in the NFL. Kyle alluded to it, but that list is, was Brian Robinson this past year, Najee Harris, Derrick Henry, Kenyon Drake, Mark Ingram. Like their list of high draft capital turned successful NFL running backs, turned successful fantasy running backs. Their list is absolutely redonkulous with their hit rate. So that gives me some hope for Jamir Gibbs, and he's not the same player as Christian McCaffrey, obviously, but that's the dream of when McCaffrey went into the draft. His draft report 202, 5'11", 202 pounds. So it's not impossible, but the odds are against Jamir Gibbs, and Christian McCaffrey was the 8th overall pick. Jamir Gibbs is not going to be the 8th overall pick.
I had forgotten. I just pulled up Christian McCaffrey's college.
His production.
337 carries, 2,019 yards.
Yes,
just on the ground. Another 45 for 645 receiving. That was one season. That wasn't his. That wasn't his college career.
Comping anyone to McCaffrey is
a fool's errand.
Is stupid because he is the outlier.
Yeah, and I think the comp that people keep making is that Gibbs is Alvin Kamara. He's a lot smaller.
Yes, he is.
He's a lot smaller, 5'9", 199. But Jason and I were talking about this earlier. The bucket of players under 200 pounds is not good when it comes to the NFL and when it comes to fantasy. But, let's say he gets to 205 because, they put him on that Jason weight game plan, and he hires Jason, which would be great.
I am available.
It's just, can his frame support more weight?
Yeah, because he's only 5'9", and so there's pros and cons
good
to
weight.
that.
You're not 5'9", right?
I am taller than Jamir Gibbs,
and you weigh more,
and I weigh more.
What a flex!
Thank you. Yeah, but the point is at 5'9", you're not sure how much more weight he can add to that frame. That being said, we talked about recently with wide receivers. Wide receivers used to be, you needed to be 205 pounds plus, and the NFL is changing. The NFL is getting faster paced, faster players. Faster players mean faster defensive players, which means lighter defensive players. And, it ebbs and flows. I don't want to paint a picture here where Gibbs is not going to be able to be successful.
He's going to have second-round draft capital.
Right.
If, fluky could be even in the back of the first. More likely he'll be in the second. That puts him in, a strong probability of hitting territory. For my rubric, I have just a handful of guys that I gave him a 5 on catching. His was a 5 with a note of he's elite. Like his path, he is so smooth. And the 200 carries, I don't know. I don't know if he'll get there, but along with the changes of the NFL is it's RBBC. Like everything is a committee. There's just a small fraction and handful of guys who are true 3-down backs, an even smaller amount of NFL coaches who that's their preference. We basically have like Mike Tomlin. Like he's our last remaining hero that will give us a true 3-down running back. So put him in a timeshare. That's going to happen. But if you have the Aaron Jones skill set of the timeshare, you can still be fantastic for fantasy football.
Yeah, Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara, the reason these are common comps are because these aren't super heavy guys. These aren't 225-pound guys. Aaron Jones even lighter, is 209 or so. But you look at Kamara's first few years in the league, and he finished as the running back 3, 4, 12, and 1. And his total carries, 120, 194, 171, 187. So that's what you're hoping. You're hoping he's a 175 carry, but gets a ton of targets because 100 targets, 105, 97, and 107 targets. You need him to go to a system that's going to pass the ball to him. And there are a handful of the teams out there, and you would presume that the one that drafts him, that's what they're wanting because they're going to have to spend a lot of draft capital to get him.
Yeah, and Kamara's the high end. If this best case scenario, he's utilized like this. You've been using CJ Spiller. I threw out today Felix Jones, former first-round pick of Dallas, because he was.
Oh man, Felix Jones.
He was the counterpunch where they weren't using him for 15+ touches.
Who was the underwear bandit? Was that Felix Jones?
Kyle brought this up in the morning, and I was like, wait, was that the underwear band?
Joseph Randall was the panty bandit.
Okay. He was just there at the same time.
That is a great story, by the way, that we can go into later.
Or never, but just look up. So it was who? Joseph Randall. Look up Joseph Randall and stolen underpants.
I love that. That was where both of you went. Before we move on to our next guy, let's take a quick break.
Hey, Foot Clan, right now is a great moment to head over to ultimatedraftkit.com. Yes, it's back for 2023, and it includes all of our tier-based rankings, premium stat projections, video player profiles, the custom cheat sheets, everything you know and love from the Ultimate Draft Kit Plus. If you get the big boy, the UDK Plus, you get the Dynasty Pass. You also get access to other perks, including the Draft Day Analyzer, where we look at your team and we tell you where you can improve, everything you need to win at your draft. Head over to ultimatedraftkit.com.
All right, we're back, and it's been that time that you guys have been waiting for.
It's time to get sophisticated.
You guys have opened up the bottle.
Pop.
And I'm ready to break it because...
Oh, get out of here.
No, Zach Charbonnet, senior out of UCLA. He was a 4-star recruit, but we have to talk about his story. He started off at Michigan, and that was a team that had Chris Evans, Hassan Haskins, 2 players that are in the NFL, so players that are NFL caliber. Then COVID hit, and things kind of got weird. He transferred to UCLA. The reason why I think you guys are hot and heavy is because the thing Jason talked about, he's big.
Yeah.
His speed score is good enough. His breakout age is young enough, and he can do it all.
Yep.
So I get that. Does the NFL see him the same way you do?
That's the big question, and we talk about how important draft capital is, and I think this is actually a good time to discuss. There are a lot of running backs. This year's draft class is deep. There's 10 guys that I really, really like. There will not be 10 guys I like after the NFL draft. No freaking way. There aren't enough backfield situations for running backs to get the draft capital and an opportunity to be successful. Now, Charbonnet has been somewhat regularly mocked into the second round. He is almost certainly going to be a day 2 selection, meaning a second or third round pick, which should give him enough draft capital. Obviously, where he lands and whether he ends up projecting for a massive timeshare or a massive workload will make a big difference. Your question as to whether or not the NFL believes he can handle that and they want to give the reins to their offense to this rookie running back, that'll be 3 weeks from now, and that will make a huge difference. I believe an NFL team can do it. I believe he would be successful in that role. He looks hyper-talented, extremely efficient, and can do absolutely everything.
Now, Mike, I had to remind you of your love for this player.
Yes.
And I had to search through our DMs, but Zach Charbonnet is a guy that you've liked for a couple years, and is Jason trying to steal your man?
A little bit, but that's okay because we independently fell in love with Zach Charbonnet. I did it twice in 2 different years, so perhaps that gives me a little bit of the edge.
Real quick counter argument.
Oh
here.
gosh.
I would say that if you could fall in love twice because you completely forgot about the man, that was never love, that was lust. And you don't deserve him because I actually love the guy. When Mike says it's independent, it really is true. Like when we're scouting these players, we try not to talk about these players to each other. We work in the same literal office. We've got like a double-wide office that the three of us ballers work side by side in. And when we're scouting, we just go, have you scouted this guy yet? No? Okay.
Okay. Let me know when you do.
And when that's said, I don't know if that means – I know it means I either love this dude or I hate this dude.
Yes.
But I don't know which because it's been both. And so we did independently really like this guy. But you nailed it, Kyle. It's because he's big. I think he cut down to 214. He looks like his playing weight will be in the 220s. And the way he catches the ball – it reminds me a lot of James Conner. I've heard that comp elsewhere. That was the first thing I thought of when I saw him. A big-bodied back that can catch. That's what fantasy gold is made of. He's a strong, powerful runner. He doesn't always go after contact, but when he's put in the situations of moving a pile, he moves the pile.
I had his power at 5.
Yeah, he's a powerful back. So that means goal line. Wait a minute.
Yes.
Goal line plus pass catching plus a body that can handle a workload. That's what fantasy is all about at the running back position. We're not scouting who's the best player to take to win a Super Bowl. We're saying to win a fantasy championship, and to me, Charbonnet's my running back too.
So, Kyle, I'm going to throw to you because I'm going to give – this is my one concern with Zach Charbonnet. I don't know if this is because I was so personally victimized by this. A couple years ago, I fell in love with a – big-bodied running back who could do it all, had power, had enough speed, tremendous pass catcher. His production profile was off the charts, and that was Mr. Royce Freeman, whose coach was Chip Kelly. And Chip Kelly is Zach Charbonnet's coach, has been his coach the past 2 years. So is Charbonnet's production inflated because of the Chip Kelly system, which we know is Chip Kelly puts up mad numbers. That he gets his guys their statistics. Where are you actually on Charbonnet?
So I'll say this about Chip Kelly. I actually mentioned this comment to Jason this morning that it's a different version of Chip Kelly and it's a different offense than what he used to run way back in the day at Oregon. So I think UCLA is actually like a pro-ready program for running backs. And, Joshua Kelly, you can say whatever, but like was drafted in the NFL, same thing from UCLA. I think that it matters what is the scheme fit of how people in the NFL. So this is different than fantasy, but how does the NFL view this player? He could drop to the end of the third round. Like he could drop to day 3. I think it wouldn't shock me. I think he, in my mind, for fantasy, he's more of a day 2 pick, but he has everything we want. He has the weight. He's a bit older. I just need to mention that. A little bit older, but he's still fine. In my notes, I wrote, he builds up speed. And then in my very precise notes, it says it's very DK or Bowser from Mario Kart. It's very,
yes.
He's a heavyweight.
Yes, it is. That he doesn't have burst.
Yes. And it depends on what kind of scheme. Is it a zone blocking scheme where you can take advantage of this? Like Tennessee. Tennessee could roll with this guy. If he went to Tennessee, Jason, how would you feel about Zach Charbonnet?
I would be thrilled. You have to know that you're taking a hiatus, and you know that you're taking a sacrificial pick because that would be Derrick Henry's team. But if you drafted Derrick Henry when it was DeMarco Murray's team, you ended up very happy with that pick. Unfortunately, it would lower him depending on where other guys go because you are going to miss a good rookie season. But for that coaching scheme that wants to have a dude that can do it all, I would love the destination long term.
Yeah, and one more. I saw this on our Discord channel. Just a shout out to Discord Dynasty channel. But they said, what if he Charbonnet went to the Chargers or Cincinnati, which I know were 2 of your favorite spots for Bijan.
Yeah, those would be literally my number 1 and number 2 favorite destinations for Charbonnet. When I was thinking, you have different destinations for different player types. But I was like, what spots would I want Charbonnet to go to? And then I realized it's the exact same order as my Bijan because they're 2 well-rounded players who do actually project to be a bell cow running back in the NFL. And the reason that I like Charbonnet so much is because I think that's the end of the list. As far as guys that could project to be a true 3-down bell cow back in the NFL, it's those 2, and then guys.
Would he jump above Gibbs in your mind? I know he's 2 for you right now.
Yeah.
Would you take him, let's say, in a 1 quarterback league, he goes to one of those 2 spots. would you consider taking him at the 102?
I would consider it, but right now JSN is locked into my 102 in a single quarterback league.
Okay, that's where I'm at. I think he just has a range. Charbonnet has a range of player we love, could go top 3 rookie pick, depending on landing spot, to, 109.
He could absolutely tumble. He could tumble to me. All the nice pejoratives that, that's ironic. That's all the nice adjectives being used. I would happily change my tune after the NFL draft if he falls.
All right, we're going to go through some other running backs. These are the ones we didn't mention, but I think you and I, we all have some steam on them. Kendry Miller,
Yes.
out of TCU. Mike, I think your comment to me is, what am I missing? Because the dynasty community seems to be a lot lower. Even when you look at draft boards, he might be a little bit lower, but his production profile is great. He's not even 21 yet, so he's pretty young. He didn't participate in the combine, but he was a productive back. He beat out Zach Evans, who was the number 2 recruit in the nation, and kind of got him out the door. So Kendry Miller, there's a lot to like. I wish he caught more passes.
Sure.
But I think there's some things here to look at in Dynasty.
Yeah, when I started the scouting process, it was January, February, or whatever. And so, and like we've said on the main footballers show, this is when we're really getting introduced to the rookies, because we're so consumed with the NFL that there's people who are deep in college and they know all these players. Well, we're just getting introduced to them so that we could be prepared for our dynasty drafts. And I'm watching Kendry Miller, and a lot of times I'll just put a single comment or even in emoticon, and my emoticon that I use for Kendry Miller, I put the kiss lips, because I'm like, this guy is fantastic. He's big. He is crazy fast. He doesn't have the catching profile that we want, but I said once he's gone, he is gone. He is shifty with power. We're not sure on the catching. He could be fine. He just wasn't utilized like that way. Where that was kind of the talk of Kenneth Walker last year coming into the draft of, well, he doesn't have pass catching. They didn't use him that way. They let him go on the ground. It wasn't that it was a bad pass catcher. So those are things that you have to kind of investigate. It is usually a red flag when people don't have pass catching in their production profile going into the pros, but you can investigate it. And I'm looking around at colleagues and friends in the dynasty space, and Kendry Miller at that time at least was buried, and that's why I went to Kyle. Like, what do I not know about this player? Because he looks like a guy who can immediately step in and be a big-time fantasy contributor.
He checks a lot of the boxes that I look for. We talked about what those boxes are. Let me list some of my notes from my black book. First of all, he's a 215-pound back.
Yep.
So very important metric. That's great. Very good balance, runs with power. I have it says rarely loses one-on-one, takes a few to bring him down. That's what I want to see in college to translate. Not many catches, but saw good hands. I said I really like him, but I question the top-end speed and pass catching. The worry I have and why he's down my ranks a little bit is projection of draft capital. Because he was injured later, did not participate in the combine, I worry about whether or not he gets the draft capital. If he were to get it, I would love – I really do like the prospect. There wasn't much on film that I didn't like, and you brought up the fact, Kyle, like Zach Evans, who we'll talk about here in a little bit, was the biggest recruit TCU has ever had in the history of their program. It was a huge deal. And then basically he beat him out, and he transferred. Zach Evans had to transfer out, and then Kendry Miller dominated. I talk about the stickiness of rushing touchdowns for running backs translating. 17 rushing touchdowns, and this was a good team. I mean, they went to the national championship game. So I really like Kendry Miller. I'm not convinced he gets the draft capital.
Yeah, when you compare style and draft capital, if he was a day 2 pick, let's say he somehow gets up in third round, like you could see him as a Miles Sanders, like never going to be, I don't think he's ever going to be a guy with 20 plus touches, but Miles Sanders on the low end, you mentioned Isaiah Spiller was one of the guys that showed up for me.
Really? Spiller's too slow for Miller.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think Miller doesn't have the top end speed. He's not as elusive as you would think. I mean, great numbers in the Big 12. I think that can be a little bit inflated in that conference. But
yeah, the speed is questionable.
He was so fast to me.
So I wrote down in my notes, doesn't look fast, but I've seen him pull away from guys. So kind of like that Arian Foster situation where it's like,
sure,
why aren't guys catching him? Because he doesn't look fast.
But he is fast.
But that also does actually remind me of Isaiah Spiller, because I kind of saw some of that where it was like, he would still get caught. A lot of chunk plays, but not huge giant breakaways.
And I know there's some recency bias for this is what we thought Spiller would be, and this is what he is in Dynasty now. So that's kind of the low end. Speaking of speed, let's talk about Devon, Achane, and what do we do with him? Because you can go all over the map. A player that's 5'8", barely, 188, but ran a 4.32 and was super productive in the SEC. So he's a player that the NFL might like more than how it translates to fantasy, because I'm seeing mocks that he could go as high as the second round because teams want to change of pace back. And he's never going to be a dude that's going to get more than 12 touches in a game.
Yeah, that's his, I mean, not his like career high, but his max average.
And so you look at that and go, is that going to help us for fantasy? But an NFL team is going to look at this player and say, ooh, like the other part of the scouting process is looking at offensive coordinators and GMs and going, I want a toy to play with. And this is a player that they can use their really fun schemes with. But yes, he led the NCAA in yards per carry in 2021. He was first team all SEC. He has sprinter speed. He returned kicks. But with that size, like the only comp that we can give.
Reading through the high end to the low end comps, like do it, Kyle. Read those.
The high end is Darren Sproles, he's an anomaly. He doesn't really count. The medium I have on here is Tariq Cohen, who had a brief stint.
He had a good year.
He had like a 1 PPR year and then out of the league. Chris Rainey, do you remember him, running back for the Buccaneers, who's super fast? And then the low end is players that were productive in college, but they were gadget players in the NFL. Demetric Felton right now is with the Browns. LaMichael James was like a famous player from Oregon.
Didn't he like lead the league or the NCAA?
Yeah, LaMichael James was like a Heisman candidate, Heisman finalist, went to the 49ers, and then was just quickly out of the league. So there are players on this range of outcomes that are wild. So how do you guys feel?
He is so fascinating and like he was kind of the player that when I was talking to Kyle about Kendre Miller of what is going on here of people love Achane and they're fading Kendre Miller, and when I scouted them, I had the complete opposite ideas and takes about them of Achane is just he's too small. It's not going to work in the NFL. And like LaMichael James was one of the guys that immediately came to mind. And then same school. Check this out. How about a running back who had 270 carries for over 1,700 rushing yards, 18 rushing touchdowns, caught 27 passes for almost 300 receiving yards. That was Travion Williams, who has gone into the NFL and done nothing. Just absolutely nothing because he was a little bit undersized. And he's way bigger than Devon Achane. So I don't see a world where he is a difference maker for fantasy football, but I easily see him becoming a trap because I can see the NFL taking him in the second round, and you go,
it's going to be hard.
You're like, look at all the numbers. Look, because of second round pick, the probability of that player hitting is so much higher than someone even in the third round, and it's going to be this siren call. And I think that right now, opinions could change once I get new information, of course, because there could be the perfect situation and depth chart for Achane. But right now, I think that siren's going to pull your ship right into the rocks, and it's going to be a wasted pick.
A second-round pick could happen for him and would be so difficult to know what to do with. Can he be a mold breaker? Is he someone that is good enough? When I look at my notes, it's just the same thing back and forth. My first note, teensy-tiny, then very fast at top speed. Literally, it just goes back and forth between very fast and open field, just so small. In the end, I wrote, the more I watch, the more I'm impressed, ... but I can't see a 185-pound back being good. It's a little bit sucky, but this is where we talk about not overcomplicating things that work and don't work in fantasy football. If the guy touches the ball 10 times a game, will he have an occasional game that is very good because he breaks off a long run? Absolutely. Do you want, just think about a redraft league, okay? Forget Dynasty. Do you want to start or draft a guy week in, week out who's getting 10 touches a game? No. The consistency is not going to be there, and if that's what he projects for a career, even if he's very valuable for an NFL team, it's probably not going to work out. But this is where I call him Gibbs light because, one, he's a lighter version, but it's like
nice.
He was 4.32 versus 4.36
Right.
from Gibbs. He was faster. He was actually more productive on the ground as a runner than Gibbs was. He's got a lot of what Gibbs has, and we're like locked into Gibbs being this, the running back too, and Devon Achane's 10 pounds lighter and he's dead. And we've laid out the case. I don't blame us for having those thoughts because more than likely he's not going to be productive enough to be a week in, week out fantasy starter. If he goes in the second round, I will step on the trap.
Will you?
I will. And I will. I won't. Stepping on the trap sounds like my foot is getting caught. I am going for the cheese. Okay.
Well done.
Okay.
I think I
You
can
beat
get
it.
I think I can get it.
That's
My
the most-
neck might be snapped in the mousetrap, but that cheese, I'm gonna be the one.
Here are my numbers. I'm going to run through all of them for Achane. Power, 1. Vision, I had him at a 2.5. Burst, 4.5, and speed at 5. Balance, 2. Catching, 4. And my note was he's small and he plays small. So I gotta. At this point, for a player like Achane, and once you see the draft capital, you will have to. I wouldn't sit on the fence. Just make your call. Either be in, like Jason is saying, I'll put my hand in the mousetrap. Maybe I get the cheese, or just be out. And I'm saying that because you don't want to go into your rookie draft and have pick 107 or whatever, and then all of a sudden Achane's there, and you're like, ugh. And then just spend multiple hours contemplating, know if you're in or know if you're out.
This reminds me of James Cook last year. At the end of the second round, was a player that plays really fast, not very big, and
The mousetrap got us.
If you got James Cook, he was going around 110, 111. Would you be happy with him right now?
No.
Right now, I think you'd be disappointed. There were probably better options, and you're still hopeful, right? Maybe he'll be the guy this year. When I was leaving the office yesterday, I was doing an underdog draft, and I posed the question to Mike. This had nothing to do with the Dynasty show or anything. I just said, who would you take this year, Damian Harris or James Cook? And we both leaned on the Damian Harris side.
Yep.
So that answers the question as to whether or not you're happy with James Cook. Can he get the ball 15 times? I hope so, but it hasn't happened yet, and probably won't.
Yeah.
All right, next one is Sean Tucker out of
Yes.
Syracuse.
Yes.
Sean Tucker is a fun player
Let's go.
on a lot of different levels. He was lightly recruited. All right, he was a track athlete in high school, but lightly recruited. He was RB 58 in his own recruiting class, but he's been a production monster since he's been at Syracuse. Little shorter than we want, 5'9", but he reminds me a lot of somebody who can be a Austin Eckler type athlete. That's probably way too high to shoot. My comp that I gave Jason this morning is at the high end, he could be an Aaron Jones player because he runs really tough despite being short, or an NFL team could look at him and say, he's Shane Vereen. He's a really good pass catcher. He's never going to get 15 plus touches, and he might have, 2 to 3 really relevant seasons for fantasy, but there's a lot. Like, his breakout age is amazing. He didn't participate in the combine, but the numbers we've gotten have been pretty impressive. Like below 4.4 is what he says and what we look at.
I mean, that was like just him and his people, though. Right?
Yeah,
that wasn't even the pro day.
It wasn't a pro day. He didn't do Syracuse's pro day. That's what I was talking to Kyle. I really want to know.
I ran a 4.38 yesterday, guys.
Yeah,
Nice.
I went 4.22. I really wish that it was a pro day where the other teams are there. They could see it. They can witness it. They can track it. They could time it. So I just throw it out. But if he actually was sub 4.4,
I mean, he is a track athlete.
he's a track athlete. He's over 205 pounds. There's a lot to like. He catches the ball. He's probably been the most difficult guy that I've had because when I look at my notes, I didn't have anything I loved, and I didn't have anything I hated. He was, just he runs good routes. He can catch the ball. He's got enough speed on some breakaway runs. There's plenty to like, and he's well-rounded, but I didn't see anything special enough to make me believe he could be a star for fantasy. Could he be good? Could he be an average, an RB2 that has value in fantasy? Absolutely. I just wanted to see something special, and I didn't see special qualities or traits. I just saw quality traits in this guy.
Yeah, my note on him is incredibly well-rounded. The scores I gave him, everything is a 4 or higher except for power, which makes sense because he is a little bit smaller. These running backs now that we're talking about, these are the guys who are probably going on day 3. Like Sean Tucker, it would be surprising if he got drafted in the 3rd. I'd be ecstatic because I think he's a great player, and that gives him a more clear path to being usable for fantasy football. But more than likely, with the way that the NFL is handling things now of devaluing the running back, most GMs have caught up to this. I can get a great running back in the 5th round, so he'd probably be in the day 3. So this is where your personal scouting on these guys matters far more, because you can't just rely on the draft capital argument of Sean Tucker, Tank Bixby, Kendre Miller. These guys are all what if they all end up in the 5th round? So that's where you need to know you need to have some other things that you lean on. But Sean Tucker, to me, I had him at a 5 for catching, so a guy that I'm not exactly sure where his draft capital will be. He has that ability to me, and he's so fast that I'm excited to draft Sean Tucker probably in the 2nd round of your rookie picks.
Yeah, I look at the production. In 2021, he averaged 146 total yards per game. That's insane. He had a 39% dominator, the things we want, and yet I agree it's probably a day 3 pick. It's not a comp stylistically, but what if he has a landing spot much like Dameon Pierce, where it's okay, well, there's nobody else.
Right.
He's a rookie who can compete. I think that could be the story for him, where it's oh, this is a good landing spot. We don't know if he's the guy, but maybe he can kind of slowly grow into that over time. But
I'd be more aggressive then.
You'd be more aggressive.
I would. Because I like the player so much that if the landing spot was a Tyler Algier or a Dameon Pierce, where you can see a pretty easy path forward, maybe there's a vet there, but it's an older vet, and they're going to be going to young legs sooner than later, I would be more aggressive drafting him.
Yeah, a good example. If he went to Atlanta, where it's him and Tyler Algier, I think as a prospect, Sean Tucker is better. And I believe Sean Tucker would end up having the primary, split there.
All right, next one we're going to talk about is Izzy Abanikanda.
Abanikanda don't want none of you can't huh? Oh, yes, you got it, Mike. Oh, Izzy.
Now, I was thinking about it because we that kind of came out on the show yesterday. But Jason's been doing this around the office for months now. And it's delightful. It's a fun thing. I get in on this. But do we just call him the Anaconda? I like that. Does that happen?
The Anaconda? Yeah, Anaconda. Yeah, let's.
Okay, I'm
official.
We can try it on for size and see how it works.
Do we have to use movie references from Anaconda? No.
Oh, I need to go watch that again. I don't.
Movie. Let's see the references I know from that movie. J-Lo's in the movie.
Is LL Cool J, right?
Is he? Yeah, I think so. John Voight's in there, and the only thing the scene I remember is when they're using the scuba tank, and then the bug goes in the guy's mouth, and so they have to give him an emergency tracheotomy. That's all I remember from that movie.
I think it's that is the one thing. Ice Cube, though.
Okay.
Right?
Oh,
Gotcha.
yes.
Apologies to Ice Cube and his entire family.
Yeah.
So Abanikanda out of Pittsburgh. He's interesting for a couple of reasons. One, out of high school, he was a track athlete. He was actually the Gatorade New York Player of the Year, which was fun to go through that little rabbit hole.
What does that even mean?
It was a big deal in New York, which I don't know what New York high school football is like, but
a lot of Gatorade though.
A ton. That's where he got his NIL deal.
So much Gatorade.
But he's a player where we didn't see him at the combine. We have some unofficial times which are interesting. He has the size. And he's really fun. He was productive. Like, he had 20 rushing touchdowns. So what you're talking about, Jason, he checks a lot of boxes.
I freaking love this dude. I mean, I really do. The issue I have is that he does not currently in draft circles project to have high draft capital. I could see a team surprising and reaching on him just based on my belief in scouting him. He had 239 carries for 1,431 yards, 20 rushing touchdowns. The year prior, caught 24 passes. He is the youngest running back in this class. He is a baby boy. I do not believe he can drink yet. He is a yeah. So you've got a very, very young player who has the talent, has the breakaway speed, has chunk play after chunk play, has the stats that translate in the rushing, has the weight at 216 pounds. There's just a lot to love here for me on the boxes I care the most about.
I will say my favorite comp that I've given out in this entire process, I felt really good about it, is at the high end. I think you could be Lamar Miller, who had a brief moment in the sun, who had some huge breakaway runs when he was with Miami, then he went to Houston. But him, Tevin Coleman, and then on the low end, it was a player like Kenneth Dixon, who had some traits we liked.
Oh, man. What could have been?
And it just didn't work out.
And to be fair, I think it is more likely he ends up Kenneth Dixon.
Right.
This is a player, though, that when we're pre-NFL draft, we're saying, I really, really like this player on film. If he surprises with draft capital, I will be fully in on him because it means that the team that drafts him agrees with what I'm seeing, and that's happened before. And then there's times where you really like a guy and it doesn't happen, and you've got to let that go. You got to just wash your hands of it and say, look, it didn't happen. What was that running back?
Barnes?
Yes,
Alex Barnes.
Yes,
I
Alex
thought you were going to
Barnes.
bring him up earlier when you said you fell in love with a player. And he did all this stuff, and I was like, oh, Alex Barnes.
Yeah,
Mike's not going there.
When he falls in the NFL draft and he doesn't get draft capital and the NFL is saying, we don't believe in this guy, then guess what? You shouldn't either.
Right. My one-word note for the Anaconda, Bandit candidate, was sure. I don't like him as much as Jason, but he is fast and he's decisive. I do like that. But I have a note here of he didn't break the arm tackles against his legs like I want to see. And so what that I'm saying of, if a defender just is diving and reaching out and swipes at the legs, more often than not, he was getting knocked down. And to me, that doesn't get it done. His catching is okay. So I'm not as hot and bothered by a Bandit candidate like Jason is, but I see it. So I'm not opposed to changing my opinion on him.
We have a couple more running backs, and if people don't realize, we get to go wherever we want to go here. It's Dynasty. We can get crazy. We can go longer.
Wow. We've already gone for a very long time.
I mean, why not? And this is how I know, Jason, you are actually practicing what you're preaching, because this is a running back that you like much more than maybe us. Mm-hmm. And he's further down in the ranks, but like you said, there's probably 7 or 8 guys that you all have in the same tier. So I'm ready to talk about Tank Bixby. Just for those at home, his first name is actually Cartavius.
Oh, yes.
I had to look that up. That's
a good name, too.
From Hogansville, Georgia. No big deal. Troop County.
Now, is that like that where they do the drapes?
They do not do that. No.
You talking about the AA Georgia Player of the Year? 4-star recruit?
Don't take my note.
Did he win any Gatorade awards, though?
Where did he win that award from, Jason, based on the notes? What does it say?
The AJC. I don't know what that is.
That's Atlanta's paper, Atlanta Journal-Constitution. That's a big. Anyway,
that's what I was saying.
Sorry.
So I have him listed right now as my running back 4. And I want to talk about that for one quick second, because the way that I see this draft class is 3 guys at the top, and then from 4 to 10, I am telling you, I find almost no difference in them. I could put them in a ping pong ball machine, pull them out at random. I have switched the order. I see every single one of these guys as my RB6. Like, if they're ranked 4 through 10 for me, they're my RB6, and I'm waiting for the NFL draft. But I had to put Tank Bixby here because, again, he's got the weight, and the pass catching. He played in the SEC.
Your favorite school.
Yeah, I know. I do worry, man. The Auburn. Is it the colors? Is it the colors that got me with Kerryon Johnson, who still would have been good if he
and
just didn't get injured?
They did. He got a good amount of Wildcat snaps too, right?
I know. Every time he got a Wildcat snap, I'm not joking, Mike. I was like, ugh. I was so upset by it because they did that with Kerryon Johnson a ton, and that trap was laid. Because he is a bigger bodied back who catches the ball, played in a good division. I believe that he will actually have better draft capital than some of these other guys. I like the potential of Abanikanda more than Bixby, but I don't believe that is as likely an outcome. I think that it is likely that a team invests in Tank Bixby and makes him into an opportunity and into a role that is valuable for fantasy.
To me, he was an okay prospect. My note here, though, is I saw a lot of lateral shuffling and trying to make moves, as in having a dance party out there trying to avoid tackles. Maybe that works in the NFL. Maybe not. Probably not. Like you can't get away with the same dancing in the pros that you can do in NCAA. Good speed, didn't overwhelm me with his power. So he's lower on my board than Jason has him.
Yeah, and my notes, bounces outside more than I wanted him to, which is kind of what your point. He was good earlier on as a true freshman, but I'll just say this about Auburn for context. Like, they were really bad this year. They changed their head coach. So I think if he would have come out and had a bigger year, we'd be talking about it more. But I agree, Jason. His draft capital, like, it wouldn't surprise me if he was a late day 2, early day 3 pick ahead of some of those other guys that we talked about. He looks like an NFL running back. That was another one of my notes.
He looks like an NFL running back, and like I said, NFL GMs, they know how these guys are coming from 8th freaking grade, and this was the number 4 recruit in that draft class. He was highly touted coming in, was productive and efficient on a per-touch basis in the SEC, has the size, so that's why I think he'll be drafted well.
And this is the running back, Zach Evans. That was, Jason mentioned it, TCU's highest recruit ever. He was ahead of Tank Bixby. He was going to sign with Georgia. He went to TCU, and things changed. The coach got fired, so then he went to Ole Miss. Zach Evans is probably the most polarizing, depending on who I talk to.
Sure.
They look at him and say, okay, well, he's got a lot of stuff that I like. His size is fine. But the bigger question is, why did he lose out to Kendry Miller? Why did he... there's not monster production here.
What is happening with him?
It's not the only person he lost to.
No, it's not, because he transferred to Ole Miss and then did not lead them in carries. What you talk about the most polarizing? You look at is it mock draft database?
NFL mock draft database.
Okay, so that's where on average he is the 114th ranked player on the big boards, but his peak is number 7 overall. Some people really believe in him. I don't blame them for it. When you watch him run, he is so efficient, so fast. He's upright, but he is speedy. He just has chunk play after chunk play. You look at his yards per attempt over his career as a freshman, 7.7, then 7 and 6.5 last year in the SEC. When he touched the ball as a running back, he was so good. And if he went to a team like the Dolphins, where you're going to do the same kind of system where it's like use the speed and just you're not going to pass it to him that much, but he's going to get a 75-yard breakaway touchdown run, I'm going to be in on Zach Evans. But there was plenty that I didn't like. The fact that he couldn't beat out anyone on any team to get the lion's share of volume is very concerning. He's not a good pass catcher. Caught 12 balls, but I saw some he doesn't get his head around fast. I saw a couple drops. I think he's a poor pass catcher. There are some guys that don't catch the ball, and you go, the few opportunities I saw where he did look smooth. That wasn't the case with Zach Evans. So that's a pretty big miss. And then he weighed much less than I thought. I thought he was going to come in nearer to 210,
What was
215.
his official weigh-in?
202.
202.
Okay.
I think he was comped earlier on as a big back. Like, One of the comps I saw there was Chris Carson, who is not that. He is a monster.
Carson's a sturdy fella.
My favorite comps I've seen for him stylistically are Jay Ajayi, which shout out to Brooks because he's Jay Ajayi for life.
If he had a better knee.
And then Trey Sermon would be the other one that
I like the Buck Allen comp.
3rd round pick, Trey Sermon.
Yeah, Buck Allen was another one who was like physical runner.
Oh man.
And had a fine like little moment in the sun as like a backup running back.
Yeah.
So Zach Evans is one of those players that in my notes, vision isn't great and can be game scripted out. That's not somebody I want for fantasy.
He has surprising power. He looked skinny to me, but he drove piles, hits the hole fast. Certainly strong for his frame, very explosive, talented runner, but I don't know if, I mean, the same way that the big boards are all over the place with him, if you told me that he was the 3rd running back drafted, I would believe it. If you told me he was a 7th rounder, I'd be like, okay, the NFL's out. So I'm really curious where he's going to land.
I put down the emoticon. I don't know the name of it, but it's the face where the mouth is just a straight line, where it's just kind of like, because I didn't get it. I didn't get it when I was watching him. I didn't understand why the Dynasty community at large was so excited. I mean, he's fast. So I understand that part of it, but this looks like he looks like a gadget player.
Sometimes the hype from high school carries all the way through, and I think some of that is this. He was the number 2 recruit in the nation, and he's been good on a per-touch basis. So you just say some scouts are just going to keep with what they saw from birth and not adapt. But I would be curious if I'm a scout. I'd be going to these teams saying, why didn't you give him the ball more?
The Isaiah Spiller effect. Isaiah Spiller's been a player that people talked about from high school on, was supposed to be good. Dynasty community before last year said he's going to be the 2 or 3 back in that class, and then dropped all the way. So I agree. His draft capital matters. Let's talk about one more running back because Mike begged me that we had to talk about Dwayne McBride, or as
baby.
I've been calling him Dwayne Mickey B. So
okay.
I kind of like him. He's a fun player who does not know how to catch football, or at least maybe let me clarify. Was never asked to catch football.
Yeah,
5 receptions.
I didn't even put a number to rate his catching. I just put a question mark.
Not applicable.
Because it wasn't there. But he's a very interesting player because he went Alabama, Birmingham, so this is not an elite.
The Blazers.
They're the Blazers?
Yeah.
And it's the Dragon, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we don't have that. We don't have a Power 5 pedigree here. And he doesn't have true long speed. But what he does have is this is a tough SOB, and his balance, he's one of the guys that made it up to a 5 for me because arm tackles do not get it done against Dwayne McBride. With the side note of perhaps it's just the competition that he's up against, because that does factor in that he's not doing these things in the SEC. Like he's not at Alabama breaking all these arm tackles, but he just his contact balance was so elite, very Kareem Hunt-esque of you're not knocking this guy over. Even when you stop him and you run him out of bounds on a big hit, he stays on his feet. He's just now out of bounds. He's not on his butt. So he always has his feet underneath him, and he looks to me like if he gets drafted, he looks like he's going to be that like a Chris Carson type of a journey where it's going to be really late in the draft. Maybe an opportunity comes knocking, but if it does, I think he excels and takes the job.
He's got a lot of James Robinson to me.
Sure.
Ton of contact balance, really savvy runner, might go undrafted.
Yeah, it's possible.
His lack of competition. Let me read you some of his yards per carry in his game log. 8.37, 7.4, 5.7, 17. But
17 yards per carry?
Yeah, but there's one here, 2.6.
Uh-oh.
And that was the one game he played against LSU in the SEC, where he was 13 for 34 and completely bottled up. So I am scared about whether or not what he can do in weaker competition could translate all the way up to the NFL. That's why I think he will possibly go undrafted. But his production and size say pay attention.
It's harder when you look at those numbers. That's startling, and that sucks to see those numbers. But you do need to look at the whole picture of smaller school. That means that the offensive linemen that he is running behind are up against the monsters of LSU.
Yeah.
So there's only so much that one running back can do on their own.
Yeah, since 2014, only Travis Etienne has a higher yards after contact per attempt. So, like, the numbers bear witness to what you're seeing on film. He'll be interesting in our post-combine mock draft. Like, if he gets in, the day 3 draft capital, 4th, 5th round, like, I'm interested. But, man, 5 total receptions in college is frightening.
That's something.
That's really, really low. But if you want to see all of our production profiles, you can get that in the Dynasty Pass. But we have one more segment here.
Take it or leave it.
So we thought at the end of this Dynasty show, we're just going to give one thought. And people in Dynasty, you can get a lot of different opinions. This is us saying, here's for our personal teams. Here's one player that you can pick up. So this week we're going to do a segment, and we're going to call it the Nasty Boy of the Week. And let me
I love nasty boys.
Let me preface what I mean by nasty. This is somebody at the end of your bench that you're just shuffling through right now before the NFL draft that's probably out on waiver wire, kind of on the fringe. So this is going to be a quick parting shot, but hey, just go for it. So Mike, who you got?
It's he got mentioned on the Main Ballers podcast a few weeks ago as Deontay Hardy, formerly of the New Orleans Saints, now on the Buffalo Bills. When he has been on the field, he has been absolutely electric. His yards per route run, his targets per route run are truly truly elite. I had mentioned a few years ago he was on my radar firmly as a very interesting sleeper, and then the team spent all of their draft picks to move up and get Chris Olave, and they brought Jarvis Landry in. So the opportunity wasn't great, and then he was super duper hurt last year, so we didn't get to see what he could do against that competition, but gets a contract from the Bills that it's not nothing. It's not going to blow you away with the money, but they invested in him. And watching Gabe Davis now for multiple years, the Bills can say that they're locked in with him as the wide receiver too, but I don't know that it is. And if you have even if he's just a deep play specialist for Josh Allen, that could turn into 5 to 6 60-yard touchdown bombs throughout the year.
And I have to hit the drop again for this because Jason,
Yeah, it's nasty.
you have come full circle here, my friend.
You're back, baby.
I apologize to everyone, but Trey Sermon is someone that should be picked up. He was probably highly drafted and then dropped, and then now can be picked up. He is one Rashad Penny away from being the starter at running back for the Philadelphia Eagles. They kept him on the roster all last year, even though he was behind guys. Knowing their situation this year, I like picking up players where if things change, I can drop them, right? They draft Bijan at 10, get rid of him. They draft Gibbs, get rid of him. But he's on waivers, and he's not far away from a big opportunity on a good offense.
I'm going to take a shot here. Peyton Hendershot, tight end for the Dallas Cowboys.
Let's see what you did there.
There you go.
I liked it, and I've been here before. I've been on this ride.
Let's just say at the end of your bench, you should be shuffling through some tight ends that you're not sure
you should.
If they're going to have the position. Right now, who is the starting tight end for the Dallas Cowboys?
It's
Peyton. No,
it's probably
Jake Ferguson.
Yeah, I couldn't think of his first name because you wrote down Turd Ferguson. It's a funny name.
Yeah, Turd Ferguson. It's a funny name.
Big hat.
He's big and slow compared to Peyton Hendershot, who actually has a production profile in college. He had a 38% dominator rating at Indiana. It's 98th percentile. And I know this is deep dive, but he was actually used in the intermediate and deep areas.
That's interesting.
Where Turd Ferguson was just short and
slow. So are you telling me if both of these guys are on waivers, you would take Peyton Hendershot over Turd Ferguson?
Yes, I would.
Wow.
Because what I'm saying is I want to shoot for somebody with upside. I don't care who my tight end 3 or 4 is on my bench. I want somebody that I could shoot the moon for. I don't know this situation.
None of these guys are going to be a superstar. You're looking for Jason Witten, old Jason Witten here.
No, I don't. I know. I want somebody who actually is athletic. So I'll take my shot with this dude. Who knows? You can take it or leave it wherever you want to go. But that's going to be it. Woo! For the first ever Dynasty podcast.
I need a nap.
I need some food.
I'll take some Chipotle.
Hey, ultimatedraftkit.com. Grab that. UDK Plus, everybody. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. If you want to take your dynasty skills to the next level, check out thefantasyfootballers.com.